A lot of airdrops have been underwhelming recently, leaving a lot of people disappointed. Now in today's video, I'm going to share 3 tips to ensure that you are farming airdrops correctly and giving yourself the best possible chance to receive those huge gains and huge airdrops. If you do enjoy the video, please do drop a like, subscribe to the channel. Let's not waste any more time. Let's get started with tip number 1. So tip number 1 is all about establishing what type of airdrop farmer you are. And for me, there are 2 different categories here. Number 1 is time-based airdrop farming, and number 2 is capital-based airdrop farming. So to give some examples here, time-based airdrop farming could be around completing tasks, getting involved in test nets, using products such as mainnets, but with no real capital needed. You are dedicating your time to give feedback to that project, to get involved with the community. Sometimes providing feedback in a Discord channel and things like that could also make you eligible. And then on the other side is the capital-based airdrops, which is more around putting money up front, a bit more passive. You don't have to be putting in the time day in, day out, but you are going to receive the airdrop for supporting the project financially. So this could be lending and borrowing, staking, and examples such as that. Now, to be honest, you don't always have to pick one or the other. You can be both, but this is completely dependent on your personal situation. Now, I've always said somebody with, a rather large portfolio who can comfortably stake and not need that capital, it isn't an opportunity cost for them, can go ahead and stake. Now, somebody who has a very small or no portfolio who wants to get involved may look to do some test nets, some product feedback, that kind of stuff. And although it will cost them their time, they don't need the money up front to get involved. So, like I said, you can do both, but if you need to pick one or the other, you really need to weigh up your own personal situation, your own portfolio, and the time you can dedicate. Moving on to tip number 2 now, and this is probably something that a lot of people don't want to hear, but it is the truth. And it is that you need to accept that the eligibility criteria are getting more and more difficult. Now, what I mean by this is, if you go back to 2020, myself and a lot of other people received the Uniswap airdrop. Now, if you'd used Uniswap before they announced the token, everybody got 400 Uni tokens. Now, when they launched, they were roughly around maybe $1,000, $1,200. But at the peak, they ended up being worth, if you would have held them, $16,000. Now, the thing is, everybody got the exact same amount. But that doesn't work anymore, and it can't work in all fairness, because airdrops are just way too saturated. Too many people are trying to farm them, so they have to make the eligibility criteria a little bit more difficult and a little bit more complex to ensure that they are actually rewarding the right people, the long-term supporters, the people actually providing relevant feedback in the testnet, and so on. Now, the thing is with this is, if you are going to do a testnet and you just do one transaction and completely forget about it, you're probably not going to be eligible. An example here is Entanglefy. They launched just last week, and when they shared their eligibility criteria for the testnet, you had to do 10 different transactions across the 3 different testnet versions. And I completely understand why they do this, because so many people will have just done one transaction and completely left it, forgot about it. And really, do they deserve the airdrop? That is the question. And then when it comes to providing liquidity, staking, and getting involved with capital, as we just discussed, somebody who puts in the bare minimum may actually miss the eligibility criteria, because of course, until it's shared and released, it's all speculative. And people who have more money and just throw in a bunch will be able to farm more points and receive a larger airdrop. Now, whether you think that's fair or not, that is the way that it works. If you increase the TVL, if you are providing more LP to a staking pool or whatever it may be, that is what the projects want, and that is what they will reward you for. And this ties exactly into what we've just discussed, because if you are not in a position to put down a lot of capital and you're just trying to airdrop and scrape the bare minimum, there's always a risk that you are not going to be eligible. Whereas if you get involved in them testnets, really dedicate the time, testnets, play Web3 games, whatever it may be, you are going to increase them chances. But to be extra sure or give yourself the best chance possible, I do think that you need to be doing multiple transactions, checking in on maybe a couple of times a week, every few days, Get involved in the Discord, making sure that you're up to date with the community and really staying on top of things. And lastly, tip number 3, and this is don't get greedy using multiple wallets. Now, some people try to do this to farm as many airdrop wallets as possible, but realistically, as we've just discussed, with the eligibility criteria getting much more difficult, you are again just decreasing them chances of you landing an airdrop full stop. Now, I personally would rather receive one airdrop comfortably than miss on 5 to 10 wallets. A lot of people do this if they've got, again, the capital, the time to do the exact same activities across numerous wallets, and that's completely fine. But if you are trying to get the bare minimum from a number of different airdrops, an example of this is quite recently, I think it was for the Dimension airdrop, you had to stake 35 tier. Now, a lot of people probably put 10 tier in across maybe 5-10 wallets and didn't receive a single airdrop. Whereas if they would have just focused solely on putting that 100 tier into one wallet, then they would have received it. Of course, in hindsight, you could say, well, they could have at least split it across 2, but we don't know that. That's the point. We don't know that until the eligibility criteria is shared. And at that point, it's too late because snapshot dates have been taken and so on. So the point here is, when you are airdrop farming, don't worry yourself about trying to catch as many tokens as possible. Let's just catch some tokens. Whether it be the minimum amount or not is irrelevant. Let's just make sure we actually land an airdrop. So that is all for today's video. Just 3 quick tips to make sure that you are farming airdrops correctly. Now, it doesn't need to be so difficult. You just need to be focused. You need to make sure you're being realistic. And you need to make sure you're staying on top of things, keeping on top of these airdrops, making sure you're following the Twitter pages, you're in the Discords, you're on point with all of the most recent announcements. This way you are just simply increasing your chances of getting involved and catching some decent airdrops. Now, if you did enjoy the video, please do drop a like, subscribe, comment and let me know if you have any airdrop tips. I think these are 3 of the most valuable in my opinion. It's helped me land a number of different airdrops. But with that said, please do trade safe, invest safe, airdrop farm safe, and I'll catch you in the next one.